Okay, now that the water is dried, I have a couple options. I could add some more lines into it, but I think I'm going to wait until I have the rest of it done because this is dry right now. I'm going to tell you I did cheat. I took a hairdryer to it so it would dry. And I'm now going to paint the islands in the background, and then I will paint the rocks in the foreground. Then I will add a little bit more texture and detail into the water, and then last I will paint the tree. So that is the plan here. So I am removing the material, the tape from the islands there. And it looks like I had a little bleeding underneath. I probably rushed it, but it's okay. It's not terrible. All right, so I'm going to be switching brushes. Now I'm going to be going to a round, small and medium round. I am going to, and looking at this picture was taken in the fall. We're going to need some fall colors of some red oranges, maybe a hint of a brown orange, and little hints, tiny hints of some greens. So I have my orange mixed up from yesterday. And so I'm just going to wake that watercolor up, adding some water to it, so that's good to go. And this is going to be our baseline color for everything. So I'm going to put this down on our two front islands, and I'll let that dry-ish, and then I'll add some more detail into it. So I am going to put this down. And yes, it's very bright, but we will do some lifting of the color here once we get it all put down. So I'm putting down this yellow orange. So it is about 3 parts yellow to 1 part orange. So just getting that down. I am using a medium round brush. And I am just doing the one island on the right, and then I will do the one on the left. Now you can see I'm creeping over my lines here, right up here to the top. And I want to soften this line at the base where the water and the island touch. And we're actually having some lovely bleeding that's occurring. And when I would call this glazing, so we're having some color to lift up. From the bottom where the green, or where the orange and the blue overlap, we get a lovely green color. We're going to do the same thing over here on the other side. And here's where the masking is so important on this tree. We know that it's going over and in between. So we're getting that color down. Again, we can go right on the horizon line and maybe get some bleeding of that blue to come in. And what we're doing is really simplifying watercolor so it's accessible to all of us and to be successful with it, because watercolors are so moody. So hopefully these lessons that I'm giving you will give you a sense of control and better understanding of the material before you start your final. So we've got that down. That looks great. I'm now going to take a tissue and I'm going to do just some little bit of lifting on it so it's not so bright. So you can see I'm just punching it off ever so gently. There, that looks great. So the color behind there, we're going to add a little bit of brown to that lovely color that we made earlier, to that orange, and that is going to be our background color for the other island. It's not going to be as vibrant. Okay, we want it a shade darker, and we're using the brown. Mixing that together and just going over. So we're keeping everything very simple. Just painting that in so that we know that this island is further off in the distance. Got that diminishing line happening. We're not putting detail into it yet. And then we pick up over here for that other island. Okay, that looks pretty decent. We're going to take our tissue and we're going to do some lifting. So we've used a graded wash in the background. We've done lifting of the clouds. We did masking. We did wet on wet. So we're getting there with all our different techniques. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that brown that we made earlier with the orange and get a little bit more into that. And I want that color, we want a couple different browns in here. So now I'm just going to go right along the tree line here. And I am just going to kind of doodle some lines across. Some darker values going across because this is in the distance. We can't necessarily see what's going on. We're pulling that across using our smaller line brush, round brush. And now the color is dancing above it. So we're adding some little other colors in there. Okay. Going to the other side. Going to do the exact same thing. Getting that color to dance in there. And blot it. That looks pretty decent. Now I want to add a green in there. And I have a green already in my palette. I need to mix up maybe a little bit more of the green. Got some green here, and then I'm going to add brown because we want it to be muted. I don't want it to be too watered down, but I want it vibrant. I'm going to use both greens that are in my palette. So I have that dark green and that light green kind of mixed together. And then a hint of brown. Okay. So now I'm going to go in here. I'm going to do some overlapping, and my lines are vertical. So this is technically glazing what we're doing here, because we're layering color over color. Now if I feel like I got too heavy there, well, oh well, I'm not going to worry about it because this is off in the distance and we can't necessarily see this very well, but down below we know the tree line is thicker and heavier down here at the base of these islands. And creating it to get it to be looking good. Still have a long ways to go on this. We're doing a nice job. At any time on this video, you can pause and catch up as well. Soften that green. I am going to blot that. Now I'm going to do the other side here. This looks pretty good. Now I'm going to take, you can see in my palette, next to the green I have a little brown. I'm going to grab a little red. And I'm going to put it into my brown that I've got going on. So I have a brown red happening. I'm looking at the dark shadows on this island. Kind of fill in some of those pockets and some of those gaps. Now you're probably wondering, why haven't I touched that islands, 2 islands in the back? And we're going to leave those just as they are. Because if I look at the picture closely, we can hardly tell, oh shoot, I got a little wily there, what's happening. So what happens in this, we could add another layer of color, but I'm not going to, because I'm afraid for time purposes that I don't have it. But I suppose we could. Let's finish this up. And you're like, oh, Miss Hawker, you're so funny, you talk to yourself. Well, yeah, I talk to myself all the time when I'm painting, because for me, that process of communicating, I just need to hear it in my own head and out loud, like, okay, this is working, this isn't working. I probably got that from, I'm not going to lie here, Bob Ross, because that's how I learned to paint when I was young. I used to watch him on TV and paint along with him, with his happy little trees and all of that. And he's fun to watch as he's painting. All right, I'm going to blot this as well. And this color off in the distance, this little tiny island here, we're just going to get that, and maybe we'll just do a little darker value right there along the edge. Okay, that feels good. Nice. Okay, so now we're going to go on pulling this forward, and we're taking the tape off the front of the in the foreground where the rocks are. So I'm removing that, and that feels pretty good. Now, this is where I might actually take my pencil and give this a little bit more detail to this, so I'm a little bit more sure of how I'm like defining my rocks. And again, it may not look like the picture completely, but we're just kind of doing our best here. Looks like we had a little bleeding. We know that this goes into sand, and that we have a couple more rocks here. Okay. And this is our grass line here. All right. So one thing I want to do before I begin is I'm going to paint this grass or the sand right in here. And I am going to use sandpaper and a watercolor. So I am going to paint this like a very soft pink yellow color. So So I have some red here mixed up. I'm going to throw it into that orangey yellow. We're going to make that pretty watery. And that's a good base color for our sand. And I'm going to throw this down on here. Pick up a little water and wash this out a little bit. I know that there is a cast shadow over this direction, so it is going to be a little bit darker. So I am picking up a little bit of a darker brown, bleed it in over here. And then I want to get the texture. So I could either use salt, or I could use sandpaper and my colored pencil. So I have a couple different options. So I'm going to just grab a little salt here from my container. So I'm going to throw a little bit of salt on here as a little bit of texture. But I also want to throw down a little bit of the watercolor. Now with the watercolor pencil, you can either remember sand into it, or you can draw into it. But we're going to do a little bit of both. So I'm going to take my sandpaper here, and I'm using the brown color, and I'm trying to control it to the best of my ability here. Now here where it's really a shadow, I want to think about putting that in there. And I wanted to blow off any of the color that I had there. Now, I see that there is a lighter value happening, so I could try to take a little bit of a lighter color pencil, like a blue perhaps, in there to lighten it up. Or I could take a yellow as well. Now, if I feel like, oh man, I'm just not 100% sure about this, how this is looking, I can always like draw into it, or I can take my watercolor paintbrush, dip it in some water, and I could kind of move this around a little bit and just kind of create some lines and tension in there, some things that are happening. I can lighten it up. That's one way to deal with that. Okay, I want that to dry before I move on. And we'll move on to the rocks. So, again, I could use a watercolor pencil. I can use that to help shape and draw into the rocks to help give us a little bit more extra value to it or detail. Or you could use your small round brush and do that as well to paint into it and draw it all out. So I'm going to start with my left side here, and I'm going to have a brown, and I'm just going to start to lay down that color. And I'm going for the darker brown here. And then I have another little bit of a brown orange going down on the other side for my rock. I could actually pick up a little bit of the darker value underneath, and I like how that naturally bleeds in. So we have one rock there. I could actually blot it a little bit to see. There we go, that looks good. I'm going to do the same thing on the other one. So I'm going to work my way across doing these lovely rocks. Kind of using an orange brown as well as the brown itself. I'm going to switch over to a larger brush. We'll see how it goes. I might switch back. I like the smaller brush because it gives me a lot more control. Yeah, this does not give me as much control. But I'm going to take that darker value there at the bottom. I'll let that sit there a moment before we pull it up. I might add a little bit of a black edge in there. Let's see if it'll bleed. There we go. Nice. Okay. We'll continue on with the next one. And as I'm doing it, I am going to grab a little yellow in there as well to give it a little variety of value here. Kind of got muddied up, but guess what? We can fix that. We're going to blot the other one. Looks good. There we go. Not bad. Taking that, have a darker color in there. Gonna lift it. Got a little bit too dark. Put that in there. Add some dimension. Give it a little bit more of an outline. Looks great. I'm going to continue on here, working our way across. I'm going to grab some of that yellow, put that yellow in. I'm going to let that set up a little bit longer. Get the rest of these rocks painted. There's this place in Michigan called Painted Rock. We're going to be sailing by it this summer. I'm kind of excited. I've never been there. Okay, we have a few more rocks over here. These ones are a little bit more gray. So I'm going to blot this one and that one. Ooh, I don't like that hard line there. That's subtlety. Okay. Over here now, this is all wet still, so we do have to be careful. Got these smaller rocks. I am going to add a little darker value into them, so we know. And over here is a bigger one. Kind of using a combination of those different colors to get them to work together. Again, I'm going to blot those. Now I might actually take my watercolor pencil and go in and try to give them a little bit more personality as well. Okay, now we have green down here and we have green over there. So we're going to do a quick wash of the green before we do the rocks in there and the trees. So I want to mix up a green. I'm not going to do a straight green that is out of the palette. We're going to take the two different greens and we are going to mix them up together. And we're going to put this down in here. Again, I want to be cautious because I do have this little sand business that is wet. We will be throwing in some brown over the top of that once it gets settled. And then we'll do a little green here right on the edge and a little green there. And then we'll throw a little brown, bleed a little brown into it. Ooh, maybe that was too much. There we go. Got the texture happening. That's it. So now I'm going to use a bunch of different colors going down here. So I'm going to throw and wash this in. Remember, the water is going to control where our color is going to. And we're going to do a bunch of drop color and blooms. So we're filling this with water. And we hopefully will have some natural areas that stay white as well. We shall see how that goes. And that might go a little bit into the grass. We'll see. And we're going to start dropping some color in here. And we're going to drop some black in there as well. And now we are going to lift that color. It looks kind of messy at the moment. So now we have this pathway of how we want to approach doing these rocks and pebbles. So it's always nice to have a baseline cover underneath. So we could use a watercolor pencil to throw in some of these rocks and things that we're doing. We could use our paintbrush, so I'm going to use a kind of the combination of the two. Now remember, when you do your final watercolor, that you have to have 5 different techniques. So we know that part of the sand here comes out. And leave some of that as a color. I should pull and blend that out. This looks too harsh over here. So I'm going to do that. And I don't think I need to, I could do a little bit more detail into these and add some darker values. But we'll just use that, or, oh no, the lights went out. Hopefully we can still see. We can. And now over here, I don't like how hard-edged that is, so I actually want to soften that up a little bit. So I'm feathering out the edges. Because I really think I got too dark over here. So we need to make this, turn this into a nice little happy accident that we get it to lighten up a little. But I don't want to overdo it because then it becomes muddied. And it looks a little muddy at the moment. We're going to take some tissues and pull it up. So, there, that feels better. Oh yeah. We still get that gritty feeling in there. Nice. And let's get that to soften up. And then once we do that, we can take the watercolor pencil or a paintbrush, and we could add the textures of those little rocks in. Okay. Now we could use some dry brushing for some grass here and there. So if you have a dry brush, you certainly could do that. I'm going to take my flat brush and I'm going to grab some of that darker green, and I can do some dry brush right there on the edge. And I can do that here as well. All right, so feels pretty good now. We are going to remove the tree, and we are going to paint the tree. All right, feels pretty good. Hopefully it's not too out of focus for you to see that. And I'm going to first initially paint these with a gray kind of brown color. So I'm going to pull my palette forward, and I have some black here and I have some brown in there. And I'm going to mix that up, and I'm going to have these lines put in here and follow the tree line. Now as I'm doing it, I'm just painting it solid right now. I will be doing some lifting of the color, but I have to do a little kind of fudge here as well because I forgot to mask an area, so I gotta make it work. You can probably see right in there. So I'm doing this. So I gotta turn this into a happy little accident. Pulling this down. And I want it to dry a little bit before I pull it up. Now I'm going to do the other side. I will be blotting this, but not quite yet. And you can see I'm trying to be mindful about my brush strokes a little bit, trying to make sure that they go up and down and they flow with the tree. And then here's our last one. Now with this last one, it's weird, I'm throwing a little green in it because I want to have it differentiate between the other one just ever so slightly, so it doesn't overblend into it. So you can see how that just subtlety changes it ever so slightly, so we know that that branch or that tree trunk is behind the other one. Okay, and we can pull that color down. All right, I can lift, and that lifting automatically creates a texture on this. Now I see at the base of the tree here, I probably want to pull this down just a hair and get this side done as well. Get a little texture in there. And I'm going to add a little bit more green to this now, to that brown. And I'm going to just throw in some of these lines. And these lines are going to add a little bit more to what's happening to our tree in terms of getting some texture in there. Not making it totally crazy. Well, it may look a little crazy, but not too much. Trying to avoid it going too much. So now we could take a straw. You could do just about anything for the branches. You could take some smaller brushes and you can pull out some lines. It's up to you how you want to finish this. You can experiment with different ways for you to complete this. Getting these branches just right does take a little bit of practice. And as we're doing it, I probably want to switch over to a smaller brush, to the baby brush. And, you know, these lines of this tree, these branches, they're just everywhere. You can like pull them out, blot them too so they're not so overt, and just looking at them coming out. So take a look at that, and this is what you need to do, and this is due on Monday at the end of the hour, and you will be taking a picture of these and turning it in. I really want you to kind of just experiment trying to get your own branches on and see how it goes using a combination of a straw and, you know, a brush. You can add bigger branches on here as well because we know that there's some bigger branches. All sorts of things you can do. All right, I'm leaving you for today, and good luck. Oops, and watch smearing because that happens. I will probably have to take a little magic eraser. Oh, I do realize that I forgot to kind of talk about the water and getting some of those ripples in. You can take a dry brush and you can push some of this out as well, getting those lines overlapping into your watercolor. And all of this takes practice. So remember, step 1 in your watercolors is you draw it out lightly. Step 2, you mask it. You mask the areas that you want to paint first, and then you continue on from there. All right, well, happy painting, everyone, and let me know if you have any questions. All right.